It is ironic that Splinter Cell started, famously, as a mandate to develop a Metal Gear Solid killer. The two series for a time were vastly different. Sure, they both involved stealth, espionage, and geopolitical intrigue, but their gameplay and wider sensibilities rendered those similarities superficial. But as time went on and market forces flattened genre, Sam and Snake would wind up at a much closer point than they had started, and share many of the same problems. Besides gameplay that more closely resembles other games, Blacklist and Phantom Pain are unfinished endpoints to long series, with new voices for their lead characters, and stories that struggle to deal with a heavy-hanging past. Splinter Cell Blacklist is, as I'm writing this, the final Splinter Cell game, and as far as gameplay goes, I mostly like it. Blacklist builds on the systems introduced by Conviction, while largely pivoting away from Conviction's focus on spectacle and set pieces. I will always prefer the slower, grounded approaches of the original Splinter Cells. Chaos Theory is my favorite, which isn't a unique take, and Pandora Tomorrow holds a special place in my heart as one of the first games I ever finished. But I don't hate Blacklist's stealthy guerrilla combat. Sam's wider selection of weapons and gear makes him more capable in open firefights, and enemies are tenacious but also easy to manipulate. Pure stealth, though, remains, at least in my mind, the best way to play. Single-player levels, even some of the 4th echelon missions, consist of enemy encounters segmented by checkpoints, and these sections are packed full of alternate routes and varied design. For stealth perfectionists, this allows for a trial and error, where you're prodding at the level, searching for the best path through guards while learning their patrol routes and good ways to avoid them. For those less worried about ghosting, Sam's equipment gives you the opportunity to improvise and roll with the punches, eliminating guards as needed. Blacklist's dense and multi-path level design is some of the best in the entire series. There's the basic move from one end of an enemy camp to the other, but also unique challenges with different types of enemies. At the beginning of Abandoned Mill, there are 2 main routes, a small dock that runs along the water, and a road with better cover. Both routes are watched by a sniper and patrolled by a guard dog, enemies that are dangerous in different ways. American consumption starts in a big Christmas fair filled with pipes, cover, lots of shadows and lights, and patrolling guards with flashlights. There are numerous ways to get from one end of the fair to the other, or a well-lit hallway makes for a challenging exit. In transit yards, snipers watch the tops of trains while guards patrol the tracks. It's a timing game where you wait for the snipers to look away while you use the trains to pass over the guards. At least, that's how I do it. Blacklist is to Conviction as Chaos Theory is to the older Splinter Cells, which makes its big action set pieces more acceptable. I'm not a fan of Briggs' first-person section or the firefight outside Paladin, but these scenes are brief, and what precedes them are sizable chunks of stealth in well-designed levels. I will say that while there is more stuff in Blacklist, like side missions, upgradable equipment, and unlockable weapons, I'm not sure how much of it makes the game better. I guess if you really enjoy Blacklist's combat, then you'll probably love Charlie's survival missions and all these extra guns, but some of the best equipment in the game, like Grimm's stealth suit, is locked behind side missions, so getting through them is required if you want the best gear. And if you want to use that gear as early as possible, it means grinding through these missions until you can afford it all. Luckily, on PC, it's actually relatively simple to crack open a file and give 4th echelon the kind of funding an American intelligence agency would actually get, which is exactly what I did for one playthrough, and I found that I didn't miss pausing the campaign so I could fundraise via embassy shootout. I mean, should I really have to upgrade Sam's goggles? Blacklist is just as good if you have upgraded goggles from the start. Economy aside, Blacklist's level design and gameplay are wholesale improvements over Conviction, providing a deeper and more dynamic foundation for any could-have-been sequels. But what remains on Blacklist is the weight of previous Splinter Cells, not necessarily their style, but their stories, their themes, and their iconic voice. Blacklist feels different. The dialogue and cinematics are snappy, quick, and energetic. Every scene is urgent and characters constantly cut one another off and finish each other's sentences. It's as though Aaron Sorkin took a shot at an action movie. Acknowledging that Blacklist is about a series of terrorist attacks set on a timer, the story's urgency and quick pace work against itself. Blacklist is a sprint from the very beginning with twists that resolve themselves after a few minutes. There is no rising action, no crescendo. The engineers hack 4th echelon's drone and plant a trap for Sam, but then Sam escapes and the drone's fine. Sam is exposed to nerve gas and captured by Sadiq, but Briggs saves him and he recovers. The engineers hack 4th echelon's plane and shut down the engines, but Coben, who apparently knows all kinds of stuff about airplanes, restarts the engines and everything's fine. Compare this twist to chaos theory, which starts with Sam having to save some guy named Morgenholt. Later, it's revealed that Shetland is the bad guy, and soon after, Sam sneaking through a North Korean base disabling missiles and trying to stop a war before it runs out of control. Chaos theory escalates, it gets exciting. The writing is undoubtedly imperfect, but it earns its big moments. Blacklist's story, with all its energetic dialogue and down-to-the-wire decision-making, just washes over you. And of course, the first thing that stands out about Blacklist is what's not there. Michael Ironside's absence is everywhere. Ironside is more than just a gruff voice for Sam. The range he reaches between Sam's cynicism, intimidation, and sense of humor is partially what makes him such a fascinating and interesting character to play. Eric Johnson, for all his efforts, just doesn't deliver the same performance. Johnson's Sam sounds younger, flatter, monotone, and more generic. This isn't all his fault, and it definitely isn't for a lack of trying. Watch some behind-the-scenes material, and I think it's clear Johnson was really enthusiastic and dedicated to the role. But Blacklist's Sam, in many ways, is a new character, not simply a person that's been changed by personal events, but a person with newfound power and an awkward disconnect from their own history. What Ironside brings to Sam is essential to the character, and I don't envy any actor tasked with following it up. And Johnson's performance is only one element in a larger, comprehensive creative shift. There are lots of things I don't like about Conviction, but one thing I appreciate is its ending, the very ending. Sam has been a soldier for more than 2 decades. He's been rushed around the world cleaning up American messes, hung out to dry, and lied to. Now, at a late stage in his life, he saves the day and his family one more time and presumably finds peace. It's a natural and somewhat ambiguous ending. When we catch up with Sam in Blacklist, we see that he's joined Paladin 9 Security, Vic's private security company, and is working under contract with the US military. After all of Sam's frustrations with his job, the contradictions of saving the US and thus allowing it to perpetuate the things it needs saving from, Sam takes a job as a mercenary. It's a brief and convenient setup to get the story rolling, sure, but it's also indicative of Blacklist's understanding of Sam's character, and undercuts what is a relatively coherent arc in previous games. Conviction's gameplay, while divisive, made narrative sense. It's a game about revenge, distrust, and betrayal. It's a funny coincidence that Clint Hocking, who worked on the original Splinter Cell trilogy, would go on to coin the term ludonarrative dissonance, and Conviction just so happens to be a solid example of gameplay and theme working hand in hand. Blacklist does not have that same narrative hook. Sam's faster movement, his karambit, and new attacks, while visually and technically impressive even to this day, aren't underpinned by any substance. They are aesthetic changes that further alienate Sam from his previous characterization. Something similar can be said about Sam's choice between lethal and non-lethal attacks, which, from a gameplay standpoint, is significant. Ghosting and non-lethal attacks score higher, and on harder difficulties, enemies can revive unconscious teammates. Outside those things, Sam's relationship with violence isn't made interesting or important to the narrative, despite the fact that Blacklist reserves time for multiple kill or spare decisions. But whether you kill this dude or kill Nori, it really doesn't matter. As I played, I considered whether Sam's ability to kill in Blacklist is really all that different from any other Splinter Cell that has lethal and non-lethal attacks, and in some ways I don't think it is. In other ways though, I think previous games gave Sam's violence interesting contexts. In Chaos Theory, when Morgenholt is tortured and killed, Sam's dialogue after grabbing the guard asks the player to consider their ability to kill, given to Sam by the Fifth Freedom. Does this guard deserve to be executed? It doesn't change the story one way or another, but the setup at least presents Sam as conscientious of his own actions and abilities. In Double Agent, when Dufresne tells Sam to kill everyone on board the tanker, Sam expresses fear, even panic.
Sam, good work. We managed to locate you.
What do I do?
You need to keep building up their trust. Cannot blow your cover now.
Lambert, they're asking me to clean up the place.
I know.
Maybe we could read Blacklist as a change in Sam, that the events of Conviction made him a bitter and angrier person, but this isn't supported narratively. And as Siddiq's attacks begin, Sam is placed back in the same position he's been in for years, trying to stop the death of innocent people by forces retaliating for American overreach, militarism, and imperialism. Blacklist is more explicit about this than any other Splinter Cell, and saves the most potent moments for its dead drops. There, Siddiq does not mince words. The engineers are out to avenge the inhumanities caused by US wars and foreign policy. He even cites civilian casualty numbers from the Iraq War.
The cradle of liberty. But whose liberty? Was there liberty for the 120,000 civilian casualties in Iraq? For the islanders of Diego Garcia, forcibly relocated when the United States bought their home. For the families of cartel victims in Mexico, sacrificed on the altar of Americans' love of narcotics. But by all means, America, go about your business. It's not as if the rest of the world should mind, is it?
What does Sam think about these things? Splinter Cell never really tells us. Sam is unquestionably cynical, but it's harder to say what he thinks of himself and his own complicity. Now in charge of 4th Echelon and with a newfound personality, Blacklist frames these questions of Sam a little differently, but doesn't necessarily provide any answers. In the original games, Sam's vulnerability is something I always found extremely compelling. Sam is just a man with cool night vision goggles. Highly trained and skilled, yes, but not an action hero or super soldier. And above Sam is a larger chain of command, all of which is subject to bureaucratic and political powers beyond his control. He reports to Lambert, who reports to other officials who report to the president. The distance from and the decisions made by his superiors are partially what drive the friction between Sam and his role. It's precarious, capricious, grounded, and makes for interesting interpersonal conflict. Blacklist's new dynamic, where Sam is in command and can talk directly to the president, makes him feel less like a soldier and more like a superhero. His awareness now extends to all things. He suddenly has an innate, total understanding of the entire situation, as well as psychological insights into Siddiq's mind games.
DC suspects Iran may have a hand in the Blacklist. Nuri could be one of their operatives, and you just left him on the ground.
It's called turning an asset.
It's a mistake.
Why leave us a warning?
It's not a warning, it's a message.
Too easy. Almost like they wanted us to find out who he was.
Sign of confidence, he's taunting us. You're right. That's why we won't waste time playing defense.
We have another option?
Defense is what Siddiq's expecting, what he's planning for.
Blacklist is more concerned with portraying Sam as smart and Sherlocky, which isn't just a deviation from Sam's prior characterization, but makes him feel like a different person altogether. The first few games, specifically Splinter Cell, Pandora Tomorrow, and Chaos Theory, were closer to detective stories than action movies, and missions were set in places that made logical sense and flowed with the story. Sam's travels in Blacklist take him to Benghazi, the former US Embassy in Iran, Guantanamo Bay Detention Camp, and Site F, which plays into conspiracy theories about a bunker hidden under Denver International Airport. In Iran, two statues stand beside the front door, one of a captured US soldier and the other a bitter satirical recreation of the Statue of Liberty. These are exaggerated recreations of statues that, at one point, actually stood outside the real former US Embassy, now the US Den of Espionage Museum. In Guantanamo Bay, Sam witnesses the camp's torture and cruel conditions and, at the end, walks through the rotting remains of Camp X-Ray. Locations like these provide great opportunities for Sam's cynicism, sarcasm, and sense of humor. These sites are the direct result of US militarism and geopolitical power. But while levels like Benghazi, Iran, and Guantanamo Bay may exist as a testament to US power and Siddiq's motivation, Blacklist does not weave them into any broader narrative on American militarism. These places appear more for shock value and headline recognition than anything else. Of course, a larger issue with Blacklist is that it is unfinished. If not at least the ending clearly sets the stage for a sequel, I think I'm safe in assuming will never happen. There are a lot of unanswered questions and plot points that may have been left that way for an eventual follow-up. We don't know which countries support the engineers, nor what their specific goals are besides exacting revenge for and somehow reducing the US's influence on the world. While Carlo Rota delivers a solid performance, Siddiq's character is largely a rehash of Shetland. Shetland is a former Navy SEAL, and Siddiq a former MI6 agent. Like Shetland, Siddiq became disillusioned in the power of Western nations and decided the only solution was to bring down the system. What makes Shetland interesting, though, is his personal history with Sam and his understanding and empathy of Sam's cynicism. The characters are two sides of the same coin. So while Siddiq and Sam share a certain symmetry, it's largely the same symmetry we've seen in previous Splinter Cells, delivered by a character we really never know. Conceptually, a villain like Shetland that lacks Shetland's empathy for Sam is an interesting idea. Siddiq may have been meant to view Sam as complicit in American hegemony, a willing tool that is just as guilty as any thoughtless politician who advocates for war. Siddiq even explicitly compares his own methods to Sam's.
Who are you?
Man who's gonna kill you.
Why? Because I'm above the law? Because I kill for a purpose? But then,
I'm no different than you.
The impression Blacklist gives of the US is that of a country consumed by paranoia, panic, and anger. There's even a quick scene showing a campy cable news argument that then cuts to a very concerned Grimm. Cheesy, but informative. Sadiq frames Iran for the Blacklist attacks, banking on American jingoism to take hold and plunge the country into war, and it almost works. This is by far the most overtly misanthropic picture of American life Splinter Cell has ever portrayed, going so far as to canonize 9/11. The game world implications are innumerable, but more important are the parallels Blacklist draws between its fictional terrorist attacks and the fallout from 9/11, which, when Blacklist released, included 2 long-running wars the US was still involved with. But with Blacklist's more generic, less thoughtful version of Sam, and without a larger resolution of its own, the setup and parallels here, while interesting, are left to stand on their own. Similarly, with Paladin acting as Sam's very own Normandy, Blacklist has more capacity for character growth than any other Splinter Cell before it, to build a cast of characters with real relationships and interesting interpersonal conflict. And Blacklist definitely tries. There is an attempt here to make some form of meaningful relationships. Sam's history with Grimm and Coben is something Blacklist clearly feels the need to address, but also be done with. I understand the desire not to get caught up dealing with the past, but these characters do carry a lot of past. Now that the dust has settled on Sam's time as a fugitive, I feel there is more that could be done between Sam and Grimm than history is history. And Coben's flip from cowardly international villain to lovable scoundrel is a little too easy and convenient. Briggs certainly seems established as Sam's heir apparent, and Sam's reluctance to trust him has more to do with Briggs' competence and confidence than Sam's history with other agents, like John Hodge or Hisham Hamza. Though apparently all Briggs needs to learn is how not to be nervous, which is difficult to believe considering he is, in fact, a CIA agent. You'd imagine someone who's made it at the CIA wouldn't be hesitant or incompetent regarding anything that happens during Blacklist. Charlie's reckless enthusiasm reaches a head when his actions allow Paladin to be ambushed and hacked, but again, outside of take your counterterrorism job more seriously, there isn't a deeply meaningful message here. If anything, Charlie's character, like Coben's, exists more for occasional comedic relief. Conflict and drama on their own are not characterization, but Blacklist relies on those things to give its characters texture. Multiple things can be true at once. Blacklist is a lot of fun. Levels are full of different ways to sneak past enemies, and there are plenty of gadgets that will help make up for mistakes, if you're willing not to reload the previous save, that is. It's also true that Blacklist, with regards to AAA stealth action games afterwards and up to today, feels pretty familiar, though I'll admit it may have felt less so in 2013. By comparison, there are very few modern games, especially AAA games, that play anything like the original Splinter Cells. And for me, this is partially why my feelings toward the latter Splinter Cell games are so mixed. Likewise, very few games today, especially AAA games, are like Metal Gear Solid, but with Phantom Pain, the shape the series grew into is much more reminiscent of modern open-world action games like Far Cry or Ghost Recon. That is not to say Phantom Pain is derivative or generic. I would actually argue that Phantom Pain remains somewhat underrated, only that Metal Gear Solid ended with a stronger resemblance to other mass-market games than its earlier iterations had. What's more important, though, is that Phantom Pain arrived at that point following a natural evolution. From Sons of Liberty to Snake Eater to Guns of the Patriots to Peace Walker and then Phantom Pain, Metal Gear Solid evolved in steps. Phantom Pain's structure isn't just new, it follows a trajectory. This is not true of Splinter Cell. Chaos Theory was an evolution of Splinter Cell's formula, which the 2 versions of Double Agent handled differently. Version 1 played closer to the games prior to Chaos Theory and, from a quality standpoint, regressed. Version 2 is a continuation of Chaos Theory that doesn't really improve on the formula. Conviction is a sudden turn with new priorities and narrative elements. Had the series continued, it would have been fascinating to see the next steps. Where would these characters go? How much longer could Sam viably be the main character? And would the slow stealth of the original games ever return? I have zero doubt that there is a market for a modernization of Chaos Theory. The games industry continuously proves that people are not only willing to play games games that were once considered niche, but that older, more unique styles and structures can still be popular and successful today. News on the announced Splinter Cell remake is sparse, and Ubisoft's corporate focus lies elsewhere, recently blundering through a culture crisis and various forms of trend chasing. Whether we'll actually see Splinter Cell return one day, I can't say. When I began working on this retrospective 5 years ago, I wasn't really sure of the angle I wanted to approach Splinter Cell from. I named it Who is Sam Fisher because that seemed to fit the direction my writing went. It was a happy accident that Who is Sam Fisher turned out to be an actual line of dialogue.
Is he really? Or are you one of us after all?
Shut up.
Who is Sam Fisher? Can you answer that one for me?
That's enough out of you.
Poor Fisher. You can kill me, you know, but you can't silence me. Not now. Not anymore.
This ending, where Dufresne confronts Sam with some of the questions we've asked here, is one of Double Agent's stronger moments. It's an interesting, if perhaps slightly cliched question to ask of a hero. What's the end game? What's the point? On some level, I think Splinter Cell is aware of the contradiction at the heart of its narrative. Sam is a weapon wielded in the maintenance of an empire. A reluctant weapon at times, maybe, but a weapon nonetheless. As a series, Splinter Cell is about blowback. Whether it's from CIA meddling in foreign affairs, a malignant military-industrial complex, or an intelligence agency that grows far beyond its original scope. These are fires it's Sam's job to put out, which is a Sisyphean task, with Sam fighting the symptoms of a much larger and more complex cause. And on some level, Sam is aware of this contradiction. He may not understand the complexities of Georgian politics, but he's smart enough to see through the sheen of American patriotism. While Double Agent and Conviction show a somewhat logical endpoint to Sam's relationship with the American government, what Splinter Cell and Sam never does is reconcile that larger contradiction. What does Sam think about Sam? Perhaps one thing that stuck out to me the most as I've replayed the series is just how great Michael Ironside is as Sam. I am of the opinion that you can find good writing in games from decades ago. Good storytelling in video games did not start with Naughty Dog or BioShock, but it is undeniable that over the last 15 years or so, we have seen acting and dialogue mature and grow across games. These are now things that help elevate the art of video games, and have done so for a long time. But well before many of the most popular and loved modern characters we know of today existed, was the intimidation, violence, humor, and sarcasm that made up Michael Ironside's Sam Fisher.